Morning. Today's the 2nd of February. In the church's calendar it is Candlemas, which is the celebration of the presentation of Jesus at the temple. And it is also Groundhog Day, which has come via Candlemas, from Candlemas via Germany and Holland to the USA. And it is about how many weeks of winter is left concerning a groundhog that puts its head out of the ground. There is also a film called Groundhog Day, which is where the phrase Groundhog Day we might be familiar with. And it's about a grumpy weatherman called Phil who goes to report on the groundhog celebrations in a town. And he finds himself waking up every single day, and it's still February the 2nd. He wakes up to the same song on the radio, and everybody around him does the same things. And he has to do this over and over and over again until he gets something right. Now, I've heard many times during this extraordinary time we're living in that people call it Groundhog Day. It can feel like that. We do the same things day in, day out. We have no difference to our routine with very little change. It can just feel so familiar every single day. So what's this got to do with today's passage? Well, today's passage is Luke 23, verses 13 to 25. Pilate called together the chief priests, the rulers and the people, and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was enticing the people to rebellion. I have examined him in your presence and have found no basis for the charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. As you can see, he has done nothing to deserve death. Therefore I will punish him and release him." But the whole crowd shouted, "Away with this man! Release Barabbas to us!" Barabbas had been thrown into prison for an insurrection in the city and for murder. Wanting to release Jesus, Pilate appealed to them again, but they kept shouting, "Crucify him! Crucify him!" For the third time he spoke to them. "Why? What crime has this man committed? I have found in him no grounds for the death penalty. Therefore I will have him punished and then release him." But with loud shouts they insistently demanded that he be crucified, and their shouts prevailed. So Pilate decided to grant their demand. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, the one they asked for, and surrendered Jesus to their will. So Jesus had been returned from Herod with no case for death found in him. Pilate found no cause for him to be crucified either, and yet the people wanted Jesus dead. It was a custom for a Jewish prisoner to be released at Passover, probably to placate the people so that there was a vague Roman acknowledgement of the freedom the people of Israel were granted in Egypt long ago. Pilate suggested Jesus. The people wanted Barabbas. We don't really know who Barabbas was. In films, he's always depicted as a horrible, out-of-control, violent kind of character. Big and scarred and quite horrible. A seasoned murderer, ready to strike again as soon as released. He may well have been like that. Or he might have been a rebel fighter in the uprising against the Romans, who had killed somebody during some protests against Roman rule. We just don't know. Whoever he was, the people, and especially the leaders, knew his type. They were familiar with him. Maybe the people were hoping that he'd help them rise up against the Romans, as he may have tried this before. The leaders could deal with him. They knew him. They knew what he was about. Jesus wasn't familiar. They couldn't deal with him. They couldn't keep him in line. He was different, and they feared him. They liked the status quo. They liked the familiar. They liked no surprises. They wanted to live their own Groundhog Day. Now, obviously, one of the great mysteries of the gospel is that all these seemingly independent, random decisions come together to bring God's plan for salvation into fruition. However, for the purpose of today, we think about how we choose the familiar, the safe, the same. We're creatures of habit. When we go back into the church, oh Lord, when we go back into the church, I can guarantee that we will sit in, if not exactly the same chairs, about the same space that we have always sat in. We saw this when we were in the Haymarket. People sat in very similar spaces to where they'd sat before in church. I drink my coffee every day out of the same cup. I have 1 cup of nice coffee a day, and I always drink it out of this cup, not on a different cup. I don't drink tea out of this cup. This is familiar, it's nice, I like it, and I want my coffee out of it every day. We're creatures of habit. Are we living our own Groundhog Day without thinking what we could change to move on? Do we feel safe with the familiar in our spiritual lives as we live out our walk with God? The same, do the same things, have the same rituals, have the same habits without even thinking of them. Lamentations 3:22-23 says, "Because of the Lord's great love we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness." The Lord's compassion, love and mercies are new every morning. We don't have to wake up to the same song every day, trying to get the same things right over and over again before we can move on. Yes, we have to work on our faith, on our actions, how we live our lives. It's good to get into good habits of spending time with the Lord and spending time with his word. But God isn't waiting with a tick list to tick off everything that we've done to make sure we've done it all right. He waits as we wake each morning, excited about the new mercies, compassion and love he has for us each day. When Pilate released Barabbas, the Jewish leaders thought they were safe. They'd got it right. They knew how it was going to turn out. Jesus would die and it would be all over. Nothing to see here. How wrong were they? And maybe that's it with us. Maybe God wants to do something extraordinary. But we need to make that choice. He doesn't want us to only expect the same, to stay safe with the familiar. He wants to bless us with the new each morning. What will you do differently today to accept God's blessing? Maybe it's as small as drinking your coffee out of a different cup. But if this small thing reminds you that God's got more for you each day, then that's a blessing in itself. Happy Groundhog Day.